Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're gonna be checking out a video titled Australians Did This One Thing Before Any Other Nation in World War II Twice. So not one time, two times, okay? And I must say this, I did not know that Australia was involved in World War I, World War II, simply before the fact that based on geography, Australia is not located in the locations where World War I or II was located, in my humble opinion, because though it spread to different regions, it was predominantly a Europe thing. So I never knew that Australia was actually involved, but learning about the Anzac, which obviously this video might be you would probably relate this to the Anzacs as well, but in previous videos where I learned about the Anzac, that's when I found out that Australia was actually very involved in these fights, which I applaud them for, helping, and being an ally to, for example, Americans, so on and so forth. But this is a very interesting video because it's something that no other country had done before Australia, so I'm not quite sure what it is about, but if you guys are interested, please do subscribe to this channel. I check out random things about Australia, anything to be honest, and I'm trying to check out as more things as possible, if that makes any sense, and also for New Zealand. So yeah, you can recommend those by clicking that link in the pinned comment section or in the description. It's a Google form and you can recommend videos and I'll check them out as soon as possible. Thank you guys for watching this video. Shout out to the History Bliss YouTube channel. Link will be in the pinned comment section and description for that video, so you guys can actually reach out to their YouTube channel and check out their other videos as well. But either ways, guys, thank you for watching. Let's get right into it.
When we think of World War II, Australia may not be the first nation that comes to mind. In fact, it may not even be the second. But what if I told you that this small, far-off country punched well above its weight, not just once, but several times, throughout the war? From holding off Rommel and the all-conquering German army advance in North Africa to deliver...
Wait, what? Forgive me, please. Like, I'll say this time and time again, okay? I don't know much history. I was never a big fan. School might have, dibble-dabble and gave a little bit of dimes. I was never interested. I was just interested in tech, and that was it, okay? And now that I'm growing older, I'm realizing that, you know what? This is actually important. So as I check out things about other countries, it makes me a little bit more interested in history. So you'll see me get shocked about basic things like that. And you're like, what the hell? I knew that. Yeah, forgive me. I'm trying to learn. But that was a shocker. I don't what Africa involved in World War II. What? That don't make no sense.
Conquering German army advance in North Africa to delivering the Allies' first major land victory over Japan in the Pacific War. Australia's contributions were anything but minor. Australia was involved in some of the most pivotal moments of the war, fighting right up to the final day Japan surrendered. Was Australia even needed in World War II? You bet it was.
Ooh,
Army,
okay.
Navy, Air Force at home and abroad.
Really?
Australia wasn't just supporting, they were part of the main act.
Wow.
When World War II began in 1939, Australia, as part of the British Empire, quickly joined the fight. They sent their soldiers...
Wait, Australia was part of the British Empire in 39? When did Australia gain its independence? That I should check out. When did Australia gain independence? 1901? How is it a part of the empire if it has independence? Y'all gotta let me know in the comment section down below, please.
Soldiers far from home to help Britain in Europe and North Africa. Thousands of young Australians volunteered, eager to defend the empire, fighting in distant lands they had never seen. They battled in the deserts of North Africa and stood against the German forces in Greece, playing a part in Britain's war. But everything changed in December 1941. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, declaring war on the Allies. Suddenly, the war wasn't just in Europe anymore. It was in the Pacific, much closer to Australia. The fall of Singapore, a key British base, left Australia exposed, with the threat of invasion feeling more real than ever. In that moment, the focus of the war shifted. Faced with danger at home, Australia made a tough choice. Prime Minister John Curtin pulled the Australian troops back from Europe and North Africa. It was no longer about supporting Britain. Australia now had to defend itself. The fight for their own land had begun. With Japan pushing through Southeast Asia, Australia was no longer on the sidelines. Now, the Australian people were on the front line of the Pacific War.
Holy.
Australia's geographical position transformed it into a vital base for Allied operations. Its ports and airstrips became the lifelines for campaigns in New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and beyond. The country's proximity to the battlegrounds meant that its own shores were under imminent threat, adding a profound urgency to its defense efforts. Now, it was clear. Every pair of hands, every plane, every ship was needed to hold the line. Australia wasn't just helping the Allies anymore. They were defending their own.
I had no idea. I genuinely had no idea. I'm sorry. I suck at history, bro. Like, it's so sad that I suck this bad at history.
Soil. But before the war comes to Australian shores, let's go back to the North African campaign and where Australians did something no other country could do.
Okay.
Repel a German blitzkrieg attack. April 10th, 1941. In the empty deserts of Libya, the important port city of Tobruk becomes the center of a fierce battle. General Erwin Rommel, known as the famous feared Desert Fox, has his sights set on this crucial city. Controlling Tobruk would open the door to Egypt and the Suez Canal, which is vital for the British Empire. Standing in his way, the 9th Australian Division, led by the determined Major General Leslie Morshead. Along with British and Polish soldiers, these men, many of whom were only half-trained and poorly equipped, were given an almost impossible task: defend Tobruk, no matter what. The assault on Tobruk commenced with the now all-too-familiar German blitzkrieg attack. Concentrated air strikes on defensive positions, followed by a ground assault of panzer tanks penetrating weak spots in the defensive perimeter, driving deep behind enemy strongpoints. This then followed by a column of armored vehicles and infantry to attack the enemy units and take advantage of the chaos.
Wow.
However, the Australians were well prepared, and the only chaos was within the German lines.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Like, I've always said this before. I will never be amused by what the German military back in the day was doing, right? Obviously, Germany now is not Germany then, but Hitler and, his ideology, I will never be amused by it, right? Where he was trying to just wipe out, you know what he was trying to do, right? But you got to give the military that he had a lot of credit. They were very dedicated and so on and so forth. So when you're hearing that an Australian military, plus I personally believe that the German military with Hitler back then could have actually done way better if they were not so fixated on expansion in such a rapid time frame. The expansion was just too fast and too much different fights in too many different locations, and that's just not going to be successful. It's just not going to be successful. But their fighting strategy, dude, they were scary, right? When Russia actually has to come in, America has to come in, like Australia, like this was just a very big thing. A lot of countries right now, like, well, Russia and America are not allies right now, but they were allies during World War II. Let that sink in, right? It's a little bit crazy when you really think about it. But the fact that Australians were able to do something against the German, guys back then, I don't really like calling them Germans because, you know, it's unfair to the current Germans who are nothing like this. But you guys get the point that I'm saying. It's actually a pretty impressive thing.
Underground in caves, the Australians weathered the airstrikes without issue.
Wow.
As the panzer columns rolled in, they allowed them to pass their perimeter without engaging. As the caves, the Australians. Hiding underground in caves, the Australians weathered the airstrikes without issue. As the panzer columns rolled in, they allowed them to pass their perimeter without engaging them, the Germans believing their plan was unfolding as normal. As the infantry followed behind, however, the Australians sprang their trap. Surfacing from their caves, they engaged the infantry with everything they had. The panzer units, now isolated without their infantry support, found themselves engaged on three sides by Australian artillery, tanks, and air bombardment. The Australians' defense in depth, catching Rommel and his men completely by surprise. Further attempts by Rommel followed over the first few nights of the assault, all without success, all attacks being repelled by the Australian defenders. Rommel's tactics changed to one of a siege. As Rommel's Afrika Korps surrounded Tobruk, cutting off supplies and attacking the city with constant artillery and air raids, the Australians held firm. They lived in dugouts and caves, surviving the scorching desert heat during the day and the freezing cold at night. The Germans mocked them, calling them the Rats of Tobruk, a name the Australians proudly adopted. It represented the strength, cleverness, and determination of Australian soldiers. Tobruk's defenders held off Rommel's best troops for 242 tough days, becoming a symbol.
A whole year. Them boys out there fighting a whole year. Like, you can't, 242 days is a year for me, bro. Dude, that's impressive. That is very, 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 very impressive. Dude, we're talking about we're talking about Nazi Germany, bro. Like, come on, man. Like, they was not something to mess with, dude. Like, they were just out for blood, you know. So the fact that Australians did this, dog, come on, man. Shout out to Australia.
Of Allied endurance, while Rommel's unbeatable reputation fell apart in the desert heat. The Australians eventually being recalled back to Australia to defend against the imminent danger of the advancing Japanese. May 1942, another crucial battle emerged that once again tested Australia's resolve. This battle in the Pacific reshaped the direction of World War II. Japan, with its rapid growth unchecked, aimed to capture Port Moresby in New Guinea. Their goal was to strengthen their defensive capture port.
I'm trying to understand this map. Oh, they got New Guinea right there.
Moresby in New Guinea. Their goal was to strengthen their defensive line and threaten Australia, hoping to cut off communication between Australia and its American allies. Port Moresby was vital for both sides. For Japan, it offered a base to launch attacks on Australia, and for the Allies, it was necessary for keeping supply routes open and staging attacks against Japan. The Japanese plan involved the Port Moresby Invasion Group, which included the small aircraft carrier Shoho, along with cruisers and support ships led by Admiral Takagi. Two larger carriers, Zuikaku and Shokaku, were also part of the carrier striking force.
That is huge.
The Allies, using decoded Japanese messages, were able to anticipate the attack and prepared a counterstrike. Allied forces included Task Force 44, led by Rear Admiral Crace, with the Australian heavy cruiser HMAS Australia and the light cruiser HMAS Hobart, and Task Force 17, led by Rear Admiral Fletcher, which had the U.S. carriers USS Lexington and USS Yorktown. The battle began with great force on May 4, 1942, when the Allies made the first move. In a brave attack, they succeeded in sinking the Japanese carrier Shoho, scoring an important win that briefly slowed Japan's progress.
Wow.
But the danger wasn't gone yet. The larger and stronger carriers Zuikaku and Shokaku were still out there, ready to strike. As the days went on, the fighting became even more intense. On May 7th, in the confusion of battle, U.S. forces accidentally hit a group of Japanese oilers, a costly mistake. Then, on May 8th, the skies over the Pacific turned into a deadly battlefield as planes from both sides clashed. Explosions filled the air as bombs and bullets flew. By the end of the day, the powerful USS Lexington had sunk, and the damaged Shokaku was forced to pull back. After 4 days of heavy fighting, both sides pulled back. Though both suffered heavy losses, the Japanese had to give up their plan to invade Port Moresby by sea. For the first time in the Pacific, Japan's advance was stopped. This battle meant a lot to Australia.
Time?
The danger would have been real and close if Japan had captured Port Moresby. At that moment, the country's safety was on the line, and Australia stood strong. But Japan wasn't giving up on their plan to capture the port. They have decided to try a different approach. In mid-1942, Japan sought to capture Port Moresby through a second route, overland, via the Kokoda Track. A treacherous 96-kilometer trail through the dense jungles of the Australian-controlled territory of Papua. The Kokoda Track was vital for the defense of Australia, as controlling it would enable the Japanese to launch further attacks on Port Moresby and Australia itself. The 39th Australian Battalion was tasked with defending the track. Later, they were reinforced by the 7th Division and other units, bringing the total number of Australian troops to about 8,000. They faced the Japanese 17th Army, with roughly 8,000 troops determined to capture Port Moresby.
Okay, so about a fair battle. When I heard 8,000, I was like, that's a little bit, right? But 8,000 at 8,000, it's not too bad.
In July 1942, the Japanese started their attack on the Kokoda Track, moving quickly through the dense jungle. By August and September, the Australians, using guerrilla tactics to fight back, managed to hold them off at Brigade Hill and Isurava. They were outnumbered, but they fought hard. In October, with more soldiers joining them, the Australians began to push the Japanese back, step by step. By November, after months of tough battles, the Japanese were retreating. They had failed again to reach their goal of capturing Port Moresby.
Wow.
But whilst the Australians at Kokoda had fiercely defended the track, the Japanese withdrawal was ultimately due to another battle taking place on the island, the Battle of Milne Bay. Being a strategic harbor on the southeastern tip of Papua, the Japanese aimed to capture the airstrips at Milne Bay to support their Kokoda offensive and launch further attacks on Port Moresby. In late August
they just don't quit.
1942, the Japanese launched an amphibious assault with around 2,000 special naval landing troops. However, they had severely underestimated the strength of the Allied defenses. Over 9,000 Allied troops, primarily Australian forces, under Major General Cyril Clowes, were stationed at Milne Bay, supported by 2 RAAF squadrons of P-40 Kitty Hawks, American engineers, and anti-aircraft units. On August 25, 1942, the Japanese landed 11 kilometers away from where they had planned and quickly started moving toward the airstrips. Over the next couple of days...
That's crazy. That is not even far.
days, August 27th and 28th, they had some early success, managing to make their way to number 3 airstrip. However, the airstrip was a perfect defensive position for the Australians, with the bay at one end and the dense jungle at the other. Clowes set up his defenses well with the Australian 61st and 25th Battalions along with the American engineers. 3 times the Japanese tried to cross the airstrip. 3 times the Australians repelled the attackers.
Jeez.
As the Japanese withdrew, the Australians went on the counterattack. 5 days of fierce jungle warfare ensued, with the Australians successfully coordinating air and artillery attacks, pushing the Japanese back and inevitably forcing their
3
withdrawal
times
off the island. This was the
3 times.
first time Japanese land forces had been beaten, and the first time the Japanese advance had been stopped in World War II.
Wow.
The Australians enhancing their reputation as capable and reliable fighters. With Japan's rapid advances in Southeast Asia and the fall of Singapore in 1942, Australia found itself directly in the path of invasion. On February 19th, 1942, the war finally arrived on Australian soil. At 10 a.m., 188 Japanese aircraft launched a devastating attack on Darwin, bombing its harbour, airfields, and military installations. This marked the largest foreign assault ever on Australian land. 8 ships were sunk, over 20 aircraft were destroyed,
Wow.
and at least 235 people lost their lives.
Wow.
A second wave of 54 bombers followed in the afternoon, causing even more damage to Darwin's infrastructure. This attack was just the beginning. Over the next 21 months, Darwin was bombed 64 times, as Japan aimed to disrupt the vital supply lines and military operations that made the city a key Allied base in the Pacific. Defending Darwin was crucial to the broader war effort, as its strategic position supported the Allied counter-offensive in Southeast Asia. The threat soon spread to Australia's eastern shores. On May 31st, 1942, 3 Japanese midget submarines infiltrated Sydney Harbour. While one submarine was caught in defence nets and another destroyed before it could strike, the second managed to fire torpedoes. Although the USS Chicago was missed, HMS Kutabul, a barrack ship, was hit and sunk, killing 21 sailors. Just a week later, Japanese submarines shelled both Sydney and Newcastle, causing minor damage, but leaving Australians anxious about further attacks. These assaults shocked the nation. Once feeling secure in its isolation, Australia now faced the harsh reality.
Like, I had no idea that Australia had it so tough, dude. Like, what? Australia on a map. Okay, the closest countries to the New Guinea obviously is close. New Zealand, obviously. Indonesia is like pretty close to, but like Australia's just right there in a big old ocean. Like I'd have thought, like, you know, ain't nothing really happened over there, but this is crazy. This is actually intense.
Of war on its own soil. The attacks on Darwin, Sydney, and Newcastle united the country in a fierce resolve to defend itself and its allies. The home front became just as crucial as the battlefields abroad, as Australians prepared to stand firm against the looming threat. Australia's role in World War II was extremely important. Its key location, along with the brave efforts of its military, played a big part in the defeat of the Axis powers. Australians continued to play an important role as a member of the Allies' forces, pushing back of the Japanese in the Pacific and fighting in Borneo right up to the 15th of August when Japanese surrendered. Fittingly, it was the 9th Australian Division, the Rats of Tobruk, that were the main force in Borneo when the fighting ended. By staying strong despite tough challenges, Australia helped secure important areas, defend crucial supply routes, and stop the progress of powerful enemies. Its dedication to the Allied cause helped shape the world after the war and to bring peace to the Pacific region. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more.
Yeah, man, subscribe to freaking History Blitz, dog. Like, this is a very good video, very detailed. And a shocking one. Like, Japan attacked Australia so much. Like, okay. Australia to Japan. Australia to Japan. Distance. 6,821 kilometers. 4,238 miles. Dude, that's a good distance. What the hell? Nah, this is crazy. What I'm trying to say is this is just crazy, bruh. Like, it is really far. Like, I got this right here on the internet. Come on, focus on that. Yeah, it doesn't want to. But you can see the red line. You can see how far it is from each other, bro. Like, what? And Japan is nothing compared to the size of Australia. Like, what the hell? Dude. That's crazy. I had no idea. But hey, shout out to Australia for actually handling business and defending the territory, because a lot of people probably don't even know that Australia gets active like this, to be honest. If you're not like really in tune with the military, like where you're practicing with other countries, you probably wouldn't know that Australia has been like so involved, right? Like, I know, and I've always believed that most European countries actually get involved a lot with the military and fight, you know what I mean? But I've never thought to myself, Australia get this active. Hell nah. Like, even with the World War II section where it's like, yo, Australia went over there to help the British, like, okay, cool, it's ally type situation, right? I understood that. But then when it came to the fact that, yo, Australia helped, but Australia had to be defending itself at the same time, that was a shock for me right there. But nonetheless, this was a beautiful video by History Blitz. I absolutely enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do too. And link will be in the description for the original videos, so you guys can go over there and show them some love. Thank you for watching this video as usual. I'm out of here. Peace.